Part 2 of our series, Machiavelli, Discourses on Levy. In Chapter 10, we get into religion. Mainly, religion is used to compel people to act a certain way. We have, again, the psychology of the group, and individuals who seek an identity through the group and its traditions, and sacrifice individuality for conformity, as there is strength in numbers. We might think of not Mussolini's fascism, but the symbol of the fasces, the bundle of sticks. One stick could be broken relatively easily, but if they're bound together, it's a much harder thing to break. Of those sacrifices made for conformity, there can be dictates involving clothing, hairstyles, facial hair, dietary restrictions, and individual thoughts and opinion. Faith, belief in certain mythology or chosen peoples. It can be dangerous when people confuse belief with truth, and that danger is not limited to religion. It can start innocently enough. We want to be good. Better than that, we want other people to think we're good. The thinking of the group can alter our own thinking, or at least cause us to proclaim things we might not believe, something like in the age conformity experiment. The result of those false proclamations is the appearance of a larger group, which now has greater influence and the ability to attract more, let's say, true believers. Even if someone doesn't agree with all of it, they might agree with enough to justify donation, volunteer at events, so forth, and end up supporting all of the ideas. Here we might think of single-issue voters. Looking at it from the side of the group, these trials, if we can call them that, can be used as a sort of litmus test for finding the right personalities and potential sycophants. Psychology really isn't my field, but I'd imagine they would want something like high agreeableness and conscientiousness. They could be any institution, religion, cult, political party, corporation, so forth. If you can get people to confess certain beliefs, these are the people who might be more willing to do bigger things, and those who refuse can be weeded out. Machiavelli wrote that the authors and founders of religions are the most praised, and all who contribute to the overthrow of religion, or to the ruin of kingdoms and commonwealths. All who are foes to letters and to the arts which confer honor and benefit on the human race are held in infamy, detestation. Rome called on the aid of religion as essential to the maintenance of civil society, and providing discipline to the army, and uniting the people, and keeping good men good, and putting bad men to shame. A kingdom without the fear of God must either fall to pieces or be maintained by the fear of a prince. But the life of a prince is short, and when he passes, so goes the fearful influence. The safety of a commonwealth or kingdom lies not in having a ruler who governs it prudently while he lives, but in having a ruler who orders things, that when he dies, the state may still maintain itself. On Chapter 12, princes and commonwealths that would save themselves from growing corrupted should before all things keep uncorrupted the rites and ceremonies of religion, and always hold them in reverence, since we can have no sure sign of the decay of a province than to see divine worship held therein in contempt. I'm going to take an aside. When the issue of belief in God comes up, people can be outright dismissive of the whole concept. My opinion, if God is anything, the representation of anything, it's judgment. In the things we do and in the things we fail to do, we will all be judged by history or forgotten by it. There is a desire, I think, to do great things and be remembered for them. It's a little bit of a reach, but if we lose that desire, if we no longer care about the future of our progeny and our society, I think that's something in the ballpark of this contempt. Back to the book. The religion of the Gentiles had its beginning in the responses of the oracles and the prognostics of the augurs and soothsayers. All their other ceremonies depended upon these because men naturally believed that the God who could forecast their future weal or woe could also bring them to pass. Wherefore the temples, the prayers, the sacrifices, and all the other rites of their worship had their origin in this, that the oracles of Delos, of Dodona, and others celebrated in antiquity held the world admiring and devout. So we have a God who is worshipped on the basis of being able to predict the future and has an ability to alter that future. It can be a convenient way to extract a sacrifice or of financial or other significance in exchange for that desired future. If that future comes to be, then keep sacrificing your earthly possessions to those who are speaking with God. And if that desired future doesn't arrive, the reason why is that you didn't sacrifice enough. This is basically the reason for the Protestant Reformation. Remember, with the writing of this book, where in 1517, which is at the time of the 95 Theses, essentially a critique of papal authority over the afterlife, the church would take money in exchange for prayer, and the souls of loved ones would be lifted from purgatory and delivered to paradise. Protestants argued for predestination, meaning that the all-knowing God had decided where your soul would spend eternity before you were even born. And so praying for the souls of your loved ones would be a waste of time. The idea of predestination goes back quite a bit, certainly before the 16th century, and possibly being as old as monotheism. We might think there is something of a paradox, free will given by an all-knowing God who has decided your future before any actions are taken that might be used in judgment. Are your decisions already known? And if they are, is that free will? We could even go back to bounded rationality and assume that those who are chosen by God will continually be given sets of options where the likely choice would be the ethical choice. But if you read The Protestant Ethic by Max Weber, you'll find that that isn't the case at all. You have free will to do as you please, and if you evade the consequences for those bad decisions, or always find yourself having the good end of a bad deal, that will be a sign of being of the chosen. It's interesting because we often have these debates on deontology, where we would first look to the morality of actions, in contrast to consequentialism, where we would first look to the morality of the ends or the goal. It's a bit of a straw man's argument, but the old, if your family were starving, would you steal to get them food? In consequentialism, absolutely, steal, feed your family. But in deontology, it would be, thou shalt not steal, find another way. The Protestant, though, might first ask, if I stole, could I get away with it? As for someone who were starving and then caught stealing, that person might be considered to be of the damned. You could take this several ways. You could think of that the goal is power, to be powerful enough to avoid accountability, to even become a tyrant, or that we should be vigilant in the prosecution of crimes, to give pause to those who might feel the need to test their faith through transgression, or that we should take all factors into consideration and have leniency in something like stealing food for a starving family. That though a wrong was committed and amends are necessary, the punishment shouldn't be so severe that the guilty felt they had been forsaken by God. If you personally have been having some hard luck, you might look to the book of Job. Maybe all is not lost. I know the take on religion is in chapter 2 of the second book. Religion glorifies men of a humble, contemplative rather than active life. It praises humility, loneliness, and contempt for the things of the world. If it ever calls us to be brave, it is we should be brave to suffer rather than do. This caused the world to become feeble and allowed wicked men to do with it as they please. It seems Machiavelli does support religion as a uniting force, something for the public good. Though it might be implied that to be most effective, the entire public should subscribe to one religion. But he is absolutely opposed to religion being used as a device to subjugate people, make them weak, or tamp down their voices and actions. Then there's that caveat of keep uncorrupted those rites and ceremonies, as it seems those who corrupt them do contribute to religion being overthrown, and the corruption happens from within. We might think of child abuse, where children are abused and then silenced, made to think that they not only wouldn't be believed, but would be hated by the community for those accusations which might be seen as false, as it would be their word against a surrogate of God. Of course, in the power to accuse, the accusations against powerful entities themselves can be dangerous. If the matter went to court and the priest was found not guilty, there would be some who would suspect guilt, and now also suspect that the church had some pull, either through sympathies or the ability to corrupt the system. And so in the minds of some members of the public, not only is the priest guilty, but also powerful enough to evade punishment. There is an incentive to protect the accused, but then the accused were child molesters who were trusted by parents to work alongside children. What happens is what happened. They continued doing what they do until the abused were so numerous that they found each other and then couldn't be ridiculed. Power in numbers. If the rites and ceremonies are corrupted, some members of the public will feel contempt for the whole organization. This can happen with any institution. It starts with corruption from within. Moving on. When the oracles began to shape their answers to suit the interests of powerful men, and that prophecy was seen as false by the public, the people grew incredulous and ready to overturn every sacred institution. Here, it's almost as if the oracles could be considered modern-day intelligence agencies. And what comes to my mind is the preemptive strike invasion of Iraq due to the assumption of WMDs. Of course, Saddam did use chemical weapons in the 1980s. It was noted in a document CIA-RDP 902-01298R 0003006700001-8, dated January 1985, declassified in 2009, that at least some of those weapons came from what was then West Germany. An average person might certainly think that there could be old stockpiles, perhaps of dubious quality, and you might get people to agree to the chemical aspect of WMD. By extension, those people end up supporting those who think, or want others to think, that Iraq is working on a nuke, which will scare anyone who doesn't know better. There was a book called Saddam's Bomb Maker by Qadir Hamza, which told of the nuclear ambitions of Saddam. Of course, there were allegations that the guy was a fraud, notably from Scott Ritter, who is absolutely correct. Mr. Ritter does have a new book out, Disarmament in the Time of Perestroika, Arms Control, and the End of the Soviet Union. I haven't finished it, but so far it's a pretty good read. Hamza, however, is making the right kind of music for the Bush administration, who look for any shred of evidence to go after Iraq. And again, it's morality of actions against morality of consequences. Saddam Hussein was not a good person, but is this the group to do it? President Bush had ties to oil and the Saudi royal family. Vice President Cheney had ties to Halliburton. Mrs. Cheney, the former second lady, had ties to Lockheed. Chevron had named an oil tanker after Condoleezza Rice. There were a lot of opportunities for kickbacks and conflicts of interest. Also, the big critique of consequentialism is that almost any action can be thought of as justified under the right circumstances or with certain goals. And so you should always question how realistic those goals are. Going back to the 1980s, Iraq was in serious debt due to the war with Iran. In addition, Syria shut down Iraq's westbound pipeline, and Kuwait increased their production from the Marella oil field by about 40%, which dropped the price of oil. All of this made it more difficult for Iraq to pay those debts off. Moving on to failed negotiations and the invasion of Kuwait. The theory behind Iraq, and I have no evidence to support it, was that not only do you get reserves, you get logistics. If you could control a pipeline from the Middle East through Turkey and into Europe, you could compete directly with Russia for Europe's energy needs, and America would have to deal with the Strait of Hormuz or the Suez Canal, for oil at least. But it really couldn't be done before 1990-91 due to the Iron Curtain of the Soviet Union and Warsaw Pact countries. And we have this sea change from April Glaspie to the Naraya testimony. And Desert Storm pushed Saddam out of Kuwait in accordance with the UN resolution, then back him into a corner and antagonize with sanctions, weapons inspections, the occasional airstrike, and hope that he reacts in some kind of way to justify an invasion. We can't say for sure, but that might be how history will remember